Which honestly, the mainstream media at the Washington Post and at the New York Times doesn't always like me. That's great, because you know who does like me? About 10 million people, primarily dudes in this country. And you know what? I'm going to use my whole influence to make sure this country stays skeptical on migration and has a deterrent capacity that it only uses selectively.
Okay, let me ask you this, and this goes to maybe, I don't know if it has to do with just being a blunt instrument, compassion, what have you. I think you could argue, in terms of immigration policy, that you don't want to have illegal immigrants in the country, or you want to prevent illegal immigrants from coming into the country, et cetera. We are now seeing ICE working its way around the country, and oftentimes folks ripping people off the streets with masks on. You and Palantir are working hand in hand with ICE. That's public. What do you make of that? What do you make of it's not necessarily the policy, but the approach to the policy?
Let me give you my critique of what I would call, I think this questioning is proxy culpable of. Our country has selective empathy for everybody but working class, particularly white males. So when you look at coverage in mainstream newspapers about the constitutionality of blowing up boats that are bringing fentanyl here, I guarantee you, if that fentanyl was killing people at schools we went to, potentially your kids are going to, it would be constitutional to blow up those boats. There is selective instrumental use of empathy that somehow is only applied at the point where it would help
back to the idea of, what about
sorry, you asked the question, you're going to get the full answer you don't want. The full answer you don't want. You brought me on stage. You know what you're getting. Okay. And by the way, I'm on stage, and I know a lot of the people on stage sponsoring this are skeptical of me. You know why? I'm on stage here because at Palantir, and I would encourage you to think of this, I divide the world into Palantir, essentially, in Palantir derangement syndrome, Palantir skeptics, and Palantir haters. My biggest fans started off as Palantir skeptics and Palantir haters. I believe that someday almost everyone in this audience is going to agree with me. You may not like me now, but you're going to agree later. I'll also tell you something. Look to the left, look to the right. The person you think is offended by this actually agrees with me. That is 100% true.
Okay, well,
okay, sorry. And yeah, it's 100% true. And keep that in mind.
On a sort of a moral basis, as a human, when you see young people, mothers and fathers and families getting ripped apart with the masks on, with the ICE folks, what do you think of that?
Of course, but at this point you're abusing empathy, because I of course don't like that.
Right.
No one likes that. No American. This is the fairest, least bigoted, most open-minded culture in the world. So, in this country, you have 1% of the country in prison. 1% who were in prison and therefore have no rights. Do you know what happens to you when you go to prison? They take you away from your kids. You know who that happens to? Disproportionately working class, disproportionately black and Hispanic men and white men in the underclass. Where are the thousands of articles about them? Nobody cares, and they don't care because it does not either serve the ability, the desire to force me to vote for one party. My vote is for these two issues. The second reason they don't care is because somehow no one has empathy with any of those people, because none of us really deal with those people. At Palantir, we are on the side of working class Americans. We support people who go to the military. We save their lives. We bring them home safer. Our AI actually makes workers more wealthy, more valuable. And the 10 to 15 million people that love me, despite what's written, half of them made a lot of money on us. And you know what they're like? They're like people like me who think, you know what? We have to do better. Of course we have to do better. They broadly are okay with, they like the work we do in Ukraine. By the way, could Europeans finally stick up for us, since we're basically between us and Russia? But they're very proud of that in general, although that's also very controversial in non-elite circles. That's important to remember. They're pretty okay with Israel stuff, especially since a lot of the BS written about us on the right, primarily, not primarily on the left, that somehow we're doing facial recognition stuff and we're building a database. Any technical person knows that's BS. By the way, if you've heard that and you believe that, listen to the person who told you that, do 10 minutes of research, and you'll see who has credibility for
Okay,
you.
speak to that directly, though, because people talk about surveillance. They immediately say surveillance, Palantir, that you are helping the U.S. government in a massive surveillance program, given the amount of data that's coming in from all sorts of different agencies now.
First thing, before I will absolutely get to that, the biggest misconception about Palantir is none of this. Palantir is an absolute dominant juggernaut in U.S. commercial and AI. Our revenue grew 121%. The most important metric in enterprise software, we have the highest number ever recorded. It's well over 2x any number that would be highly respectable. So we're like the Michael Jordan on the numbers in U.S. commercial. And that really pisses a lot of people off. That's true. Most of our money, 75% of our revenue comes from America. That's growing 77%. And most of our market cap comes from that. So like we are just crushing it in the most meritocratic environment in the world, U.S. commercial. The most interesting thing about the lie that we are doing this is not that our product couldn't be abused. Any workable technology that's ever been built has been abused. Electricity has been abused. Gasoline engines have been abused. Okay, but our product is the single hardest product in the world to abuse because every single step that you take is absolutely transparent. So if you want to use our product to abuse human rights, you've created a record of you doing it. I can tell you, and this is the part where you can get into the low trust environment and you don't have to believe me. The environments that abuse data in this world, mostly SIGINT, meaning from satellites, have never liked our product. And we were the first place to act, we were the first, and to my extent, to my knowledge, only company that said we're not going to work in Russia, we're not going to work in China. And by the way, on the issue everyone would think, because they somehow think I'm like only care about, we were the first company to say we would not build a Muslim database, and we ended contracts in this country with institutions that were essentially there to surveil Muslim Americans. And the primary reason for these attacks is on the far left, people are like, they do not like us because we stand for meritocracy. We hire and promote independent of all variables. We stand for the rule of law. We stand for competence. And we call out the complete bullshit that there's. Okay, on the far right, they don't like us because they think I'm somehow a Jewish conspiracy because 2 of the 4 or 5 co-founders are Jewish. I'm like, okay, great. A lot of Jews are successful. It's not all conspiracy. It is a fact. Those are just the facts.
You mentioned,
and I'm a little bit pissed at the New York Times, honestly, but and the main reason is I believe in your, if you're listening, I believe in your mission. When you write a technically completely illiterate article, you lose a lot of credibility if people are technical. And that's just a fact. That article about us being a surveillance thing is like where it's all implied what we do. Yeah, but the problem is you lose credibility with anyone who goes on the thing, and that's damaging for our democracy.
Let me ask you this.